there was a Princeton student like last week who created a app that can detect ChatGPT.
I love that.
To like, ruin all these high schoolers.
Man, what a narc.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly what I thought. That's
He's
exactly
a college
what I
kid.
thought.
All of his friends are having fun with ChatGPT. Oh, man.
I know.
I'm Jon Favreau. Welcome to Offline. My guest today is essayist and YouTuber Evan Puschak, also known as the Nerdwriter. Evan's known for his in-depth analysis and commentary on a wide range of topics, including film, literature, art, and philosophy. He's gained a large following for his ability to explain complex ideas in an accessible and engaging way. He began his YouTube channel in 2011 and has since amassed over 3 million subscribers. On today's episode, the two of us will be talking about ChatGPT, the artificial intelligence chatbot from OpenAI that happens to be responsible for writing that intro of Evan I just read. Evan recently published a video essay on the real dangers of ChatGPT, which is actually an essay about the real value of writing. Evan argues that if we fully outsource writing to ChatGPT, we'll lose something essential about being human, namely, our ability to uniquely express and understand ourselves and the world around us. Here's Evan Puschak. Evan Puschak, welcome to Offline.
Thanks for having me.
So I've been wanting to have a conversation about ChatGPT for a while now. For those of you who don't know, ChatGPT is the new artificial intelligence conversation bot from OpenAI that's so good people think it might replace Google, high school English, even the entire writing profession itself. Evan, you recently made a video essay about this debate. Why did you want to take this issue on?
Well, I mean, I, like everyone else, was totally fascinated with ChatGPT when it came out. The crazy thing is it only came out like a month and a half ago, and it feels like it's been with us for so long at this point because
it's really dominated social media too.
Exactly. And it's understandable because, I, like everyone, started playing with it, asking it different kinds of prompts, write an essay on this, give me a sonnet in the style of Shakespeare about corgis or whatever, and it is amazing what it can churn out. And I think, it's rhetorical flexibility, its rhetorical muscle, its ability to produce not just sentences, but paragraphs of coherent text is really, really fascinating. What kind of impact it's going to have is, I think, still unclear, but, people can't really resist, I think, in the first few days after something like this comes out, saying that all writing is dead or the essay is going away, or, we love to think that we're reaching the end of an era. That's just sort of, I think, what we're hardwired to think. It could be that. It could be as extreme, but it also could be something less, less impactful. It's hard to say now. It's just really, really interesting, and I sort of wanted to dive into the implications of that as related to things that I've been thinking about around writing.
Can you talk about how the ChatGPT works, just for people who might not be familiar, and what's the magic here? Like, why does it seem passably human? What is the bot doing?
Well, let me start by saying I'm not an expert in AI or large language models, which is what this is. It's a large language model, and essentially what it does is it scrapes the whole internet, essentially all the language on the internet. And what it's doing, and there was actually a really interesting paper about this by Murray Shanahan, I just wanted to shout that out, called Talking About Large Language Models, where he essentially says that it's based around this technology of next token prediction, which essentially means that you give it a piece of text, and then it looks through all the language that has ever existed and tries to predict with the highest amount of accuracy what would go next in that sentence. So you could say, he gives the example, he could say twinkle, twinkle, the most likely next two words after twinkle, twinkle are going to be little star, and so it is a high probability that that's going to be right. you could say after Frodo defeated Sauron, he returned to, and the most likely answer is going to be the Shire, just because it knows all of the times that that's been used in the history of text, and just the amount of text that it's using gives it its extreme power. That Lord of the Rings example is another one that he used, and into this it adds some extra stuff that allows it to be more accurate. Humans were essentially training it on certain answers, and there's a lot that goes into producing an accurate response to that, because it has to understand what the intention of the asker is, which is why it still has problems, which is why it still often says things that are completely incorrect, if not nonsensical. It's good at being not nonsensical, which is impressive, but it's not great at being correct. And then it says the correct thing with just the most confidence that you've ever heard in your life. So it's similar. It's sort of similar to when, I don't know if you had this experience when I was in school and college. Like, all my teachers really, really tried to get us to not use Wikipedia as a source. Because it was not reliable in terms of as a primary source for things. And that was drilled into us. It's sort of similar to that in that, it's going to be accurate an impressive amount of times, but you would not be wise to use it as a primary source on something that you really want it to be right. You have to check what it's saying.
I am feeling old because in college we didn't have Wikipedia yet to be warned about by professors. But
wow.
Yeah, I know. It's rough. This is oversimplifying it, but it is basically a really, really smart autocomplete that we have like on our phones right now for texting, which I think is important as we start talking about the possibility of it replacing writing as a profession. Because I use it a bunch just in preparation for this interview, and I hadn't really used it all that much before. And it is interesting, like using it as a sort of alternative to Google does seem sort of useful. Using it because, you can ask it like, what's a good place to eat in Los Angeles that's new, or that I want like you can do that, and it will, it's the search results or what it spits out is much clearer and I think more helpful than sometimes even what you get with Google. When you try to do like, I asked for a couple Obama speeches.
I knew it. I knew you would.
I had to.
I knew you would. Yeah.
I had to.
Of course.
And it's, you can tell that it is using language that Obama uses over and over again, or has used over and over again. But it's not fooling anyone.
No,
I don't think. I mean, you said
well,
you said in the essay it's basically like a B- high school student.
Yes, and that's where it starts to get more interesting or dangerous, depending on how you look at it. Because it's not going to be able to reproduce a Jon Favreau Obama speech with any kind of persuasive power that you might be able to give it. But what's so interesting about this is that it came out, I think, November 30th, and I just happened to be visiting my parents' house for Thanksgiving the week before. And my parents are trying to sell their house, and part of that process is that they're making me go through all of my old stuff, of which they have kept all of it. And so I was going through these boxes of essays that I had written in elementary school and junior high and high school, and they are so bad. Like, they are just the writing is torturous, and what you get most from it really is how much I really did not want to be writing those essays, which I think is important to this whole discussion. But the ChatGPT versions of those prompts are definitely better than what I was writing. And so it can't it's not going to be able to reproduce sophisticated writing. It just can't do that. Maybe in the future it will, but we're not there yet. But the writing of students, particularly high school students and younger, it can reproduce, and it can reproduce it pretty well. And so that does pose, I think, some kind of issue for teachers and for the education system.
You say that in the essay that maybe we'll outsource writing to GPT like we outsourced math to calculators, spelling to spell check, memory to the internet. I want to spend most of our time talking about writing, but do you think that we have lost anything by outsourcing math, spelling, and especially memory? I thought that one was particularly interesting to these technologies.
It's a good question. I mean, if you're asking me, somebody who is a writer in the arts, no, I have not lost anything from outsourcing math to calculators.
Same.
You know,
Same.
And that's another point I bring up, which is that, you know, the questions that I was personally posing to my calculus teachers was, when am I ever going to use this? You know, and they came up with some kind of bullshit that it would be valuable to me in future in my life. And the truth is that it really isn't. And I think high schoolers are very savvy about that. They can sort of understand when you're reaching. So for me, those things are not as important. Now, memory to the internet is an interesting one. I'm sort of resigned about it now. I think that is the general feeling in the public. There are people. I mean, there are people who like you can find essays online who argue for rote memorization as a method of schooling to come back in a big way. You know, we still do that, but we don't do it as much as they used to do in the early parts of the 20th century, in which, you know, that was a huge part of education. Now we actually lean more towards essays because, you know, I think in part we realize that our access to information is always with us. You know, it's never not going to be with us moving forward. And so I don't know for sure if we've lost something from not being able to recall on the spot things, but maybe we have. I don't know. What do you think?
The memory one stuck out at me because
we're just glossing over spell check, by the way. We don't need
thank God for spell check. I don't. That was a waste of time. Though I did spelling bees and all that, so you know, whatever. Well, you had to when you were like 3rd, 4th grade. But memory, I've noticed, and again, I can't tell if this is age or technology, but that because I'm so dependent on, I'll just Google it if I need to remember something, that personal memories, stories, not even from childhood, even from like a couple weeks ago when I'm trying to like piece together a story to tell friends, I have a harder time. And I wonder if it's because like I'm not using the muscle of memory as nearly as much as I used to before Google, which was, you know, probably the first 20, 25 years of my life.
Well, I mean, this is, I think, it's all gonna wrap into the conversation about writing, but, you know, it might be the case that like in-person dialogue, conversation, dinner party chatter has suffered for the loss of memory.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you're alone and you're trying to compose something on your own, you know, then it doesn't really matter at what speed you get to the information. But if what we're all operating on is like a surface level of things, and in order to say something intelligent about what happened in the world, or like you say 3 weeks ago in your own life, you know, then conversation could suffer from that. But you know, it's too late. It's too late. Yeah. We're never getting it back.
Offline is brought to you by bookshop.org. We've all been there. That feeling of existential dread when you're about to hit the checkout button on a book that's been sitting in your online cart and worry if your money is going directly to funding a billionaire's mission to space, or maybe just another jet ski for his mega yacht. Bookshop.org is here to help you feel good about buying books online again.
Thank you.
Every purchase from bookshop.org supports local independent bookstores.
I like that idea.
We do love independent book. Everyone has a local bookstore that you love.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And you think to yourself,
is that how it's pronounced? Book?
Did I say
Book?
Bookstore?
No, I've never heard it out loud. Book.
I know about them. I just know that's interesting to hear it said. Book. Keep going.
Bookshop.org is a benefit corporation, which means that they are doing business for the public good. It's super easy to order a book online and have the profit from that sale go to your local bookstore. Plus, book recommendations on bookshop.org come from real people who love books, not algorithms. So they do all the work, you get your book in the mail, and then bookshop.org gives that local bookstore a healthy share of the profit. They've raised over $22 million for local bookstores, are unapologetically anti-Amazon, and believe local bookstores are essential community hubs that foster culture, curiosity, and a love of reading. Bookshop.org is committed to helping local stores survive and thrive, and are a certified B Corp named Best for the World by B Labs as one of the top 5% of B Corps in the world for, quote, their overall mission, ethics, accountability, and transparency. Whether you're searching for the planner that will finally get your life in order, a buzzy new memoir, or a fantasy novel that sweeps you away, bookshop.org has just the book you're looking for. When you purchase from bookshop.org, you're supporting local independent bookstores, so they'll be around for all of us to enjoy in the future. Feel good about where you buy books. Use code OFFLINE10 to get 10% off your next order at bookshop.org and start making a difference today. That's code OFFLINE10 for 10% off at bookshop.org. Offline is brought to you by Smile Actives. Are you self-conscious about your smile due to stains? Are your teeth aging you? Popular food and drinks are known to stain teeth. Beverages like coffee and wine stain them over time. So what can you do to brighten your smile? Well, you should give Smile Actives a try. Smile Actives is safe, effective, easy to use, and will keep you smiling proudly. I love Smile Actives. I've been using it for a long time. It's very easy to use. It works. It doesn't hurt. It's not expensive. It's not like going to a dentist. It's great. 97% of Smile Actives users in a clinical trial reported up to 6 shades whiter on average, all within 30 days. Visit smileactives.com/offline today to receive our special buy one, get one free offer. It's a BOGO, plus free shipping and handling. That's smileactives.com/offline. Well, I want to get to the writing part. I mean, your main argument in the essay is that even though we will probably end up outsourcing many categories of basic writing to AI, we should be careful about how much we outsource because there's something special and important and fundamentally human about writing. What is it?
So, and this sort of goes back to the me of high school, which is that I really was an uninspired student in high school. Like I said, those essays, it just steaming off of them was this kid who really would rather have done anything else but sit down and write this essay on Pride and Prejudice. And that's just because, the educational system as a whole, at least for me in the sort of middle class suburban Philadelphia world, I could read the incentives of the education system. And the incentives said to me that what mattered wasn't learning, it was grades. And that learning was just a means to achieve the grades, which was a means to achieve the GPA, which was a means to achieve the degree, the college, the job, and so on. And that was just me reading the world around me. Now, great teachers can puncture through that, but the system as a whole can corrupt, the good intentions of individual people. It wasn't until I got to college, and I write about this in my book, which is really sort of the theme of the book, which is that when I got to college as this uninspired kid and had completed these checkpoints, I discovered Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was such a huge figure for me in my development. And what was so mind-blowing about Emerson was that reading him, it was like I was reading my own thoughts. And that just blew my mind. And Emerson has this quote that I'll never forget, which is that the young man reveres men of genius because, to speak truly, they are more himself than he is. And that is just to say that, language, and this is what I really learned from Emerson, language is what makes up the human mind. And the more sophisticated you can be with language, the better you can understand yourself, others, in the world. Emerson taught me that, and it launched in me, it's a sort of hunger to get to the bottom of myself to answer the questions I talk about in the video, which are who am I and what are those things that I believe? And so that is what writing is. You know, we talk about thinking, we talk about speaking, we talk about writing, but they're just different words for the same thing. Thinking is writing, speaking is writing, and writing is writing. It's just different levels of sophistication. For the most part, the me until I started writing for myself, the me was made up of the language in my head, the language of thought, which is just chaos. The language in your mind is pure chaos. And the language of speech is a little better, but please, no one transcribe the things that do not transcribe this, because the level of sophistication between what I am able to extemporaneously say versus what I'm able to compose in writing, the gulf there is huge. And so I think what I learned was that just this respect for the ability to compose language and how really important it is for self-knowledge and knowledge of the world.
Self-knowledge is especially interesting there. It made me think, have you heard that psychologists and therapists often suggest keeping a journal to patients and the reason they do that is because the act of writing apparently integrates our emotional right brain with our logical left brain, so that instead of lying awake and spinning out with our thoughts and emotions, as you just alluded to, like don't transcribe what's going on in my head, we can understand and process them by using the more logical left brain to figure out how to channel and organize those emotions into actual words on a page. And that in itself is sort of an act of self-realization and understanding that sort of helps your own mental health. Had you heard about that?
I mean, I haven't heard that precisely, but it makes complete sense. It makes complete, I mean, think about what talk therapy is, you know, what psychotherapy is. You know, you're being asked to essentially articulate the way you feel in language, the way you feel about certain things to a particularly sensitive listener who can identify the patterns, the sort of the deleterious patterns in your own thinking, you know, and that's I think that's at the key of this whole conversation about ChatGPT and writing, is that the language in our heads, or the language that we receive from the world, like it doesn't just form into spontaneous patterns. It takes the patterns of the language that already exists. You know, and so we are all living along the grooves of language created by other people. Yeah. On the most basic level, we are living in the pattern of the syntax and grammar of language. So, you know, the way sentences are put together, that's really the only way we can think. You know, and so that's the most fundamental thing. But then on top of that, you have the conventional wisdom of the culture and the received knowledge that you get, the ways that your mind analyzes the way that you analyze yourself without even realizing it is along sentence structures and, you know, persuasive structures, forms and genres of writing that you have been, you know, you've been exposed to throughout your life. And the only way to disrupt that is to create language of your own, I think.
Yeah, well, I love the line in the video where you say, "Not to write is to live according to the language of others." This is what you were just talking about. But just to play devil's advocate on this, I happen to agree. But so ChatGPT is living according to the language of others because it's basically just a composite of the entire internet, right? But isn't what we write and think a composite of all the information we've processed? You know, like, what's the difference between...
There is no difference. It's just a matter of degree. It's just a matter of, you know, that's the thing. It's like the human mind and culture are the same thing. It's just a symbolic reality. You know, it's a symbolic system, and the dominant symbolic system in that reality is language. We have all other kinds of symbolic systems, gestures or images or architecture or whatever ways that we read the world. But by far the most dominant one is language. And so we can never escape like I say in the video, like writing is a form of editing as well, because we're just receiving words, that Shakespeare made, or we're receiving ways of thinking that Virginia Woolf wrote, whomever it is. And that will always be the case. You can never transcend the symbolic reality. But Shakespeare and Virginia Woolf and you have the exact same power to change the reality that we all live in. And a generative relationship to language is, I think, much more beneficial to people and to the world than a purely received one. And then there's degrees in that too. There's reading tweets, and then there's reading Virginia Woolf.
Right. There's a little bit different.
Yeah, exactly. So there's writing, a letter to your friend, and then there's attempting to write an essay about something that means a lot to you. Just the process of doing that, just bolting words into a structure of your own is, I think, going to be therapeutic on the personal level. On the cultural level, desperately needed.
Well, it's interesting because, I'm interested. I wonder what you think are sort of the top hallmarks of really good writing, because I do think that gets to what humans and individuals can do that artificial intelligence could probably never do.
I mean, I don't want to say never. Who the hell knows?
Yeah, that's right. That's my optimistic take.
Well, there's the thing of there was a Princeton student last week who created a app that can detect ChatGPT.
I love that.
To ruin all these high schoolers.
Man, what a narc.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly what I thought. That's
He's a college kid. All of his friends are having fun with ChatGPT. Oh, man.
I know. But good for him. And
yeah.
It might be able to catch this version of it, but it's going to be an arms race.
Yeah.
The AI is going to get better, and eventually maybe it will be able to write something as sophisticated as our favorite writers. I don't know. I don't want to say never, but I don't know. For me, the hallmarks of great writing it's about drilling into parts of experience that have not been articulated.
Yeah.
The beauty of Shakespeare is that when he wrote Romeo and Juliet, what he essentially did was define a kind of experience, romantic love, that did not really exist in that way prior, and which we are all living still. The shortest definition of love as we know it in 2022, like identity affirming and potentially identity destroying love, is Romeo and Juliet. That's the most succinct definition of love. He brought that into the culture, and that's what genius is. You don't have to be a genius to be a great writer, but there are still, it would be silly to think that there are no more kinds of experience that have yet to be articulated in those interesting ways. So when I'm reading, I'm always looking for those people who just essentially turn a light on something that we were all sort of orbiting, but couldn't put that's why it's so joyful when you find a writer who it just clicks for you, and they've explained something, and all of a sudden your life comes into focus. I mean, that is the drug that I'm constantly looking for.
When so I was originally trained as just a standard political speechwriter.
Yeah.
And by the time I started working for Obama, I knew how to write a standard Democratic political speech. And then when I started working with him, I basically had to unlearn all of that to figure out how to write in his voice, because he was intent on like making it personal, making it about himself. The reason the 2004 convention speech did well is because he told a story that no other politician could have told. The reason Dreams from My Father was a great first book is because it didn't sound like a politician was writing it who was going to run for office. So then long after I left him and would like advise people on speeches, and they say, oh, what makes a good speech? What makes it is writing it from your point of view, writing a speech that no one else could give but you, telling a story that no one else could tell but you, that no one else has heard, making a point that no one else has made before. And, you know, what people say about good writing often is like, it's not, you might not remember what you heard, but if it's good, you'll remember how you felt. And so there's certain emotion that good writing generates. And that's whether that's, you know, moving you emotionally, whether it's making you laugh. ChatGPT doesn't do well with humor, right? And so like there's emotion that comes from writing that I don't know you can necessarily capture, at least if you are just scraping the internet of language and you know, generating a really smart autocomplete.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because how do you write something that only you could write for someone else?
The key there also was like, if I had no contact with Obama, if I had to just study him, just read his books, read his transcripts of his interview, basically be a ChatGPT, and then churn things out, I don't think it would have been all that successful. And the other big thing I tell people is like, if you are the kind of politician whose speechwriter is like 5 staffers removed from you and you're just getting drafts and editing and sending it back, then like that's not really going to work. Like I got to know him and collaborate with him, and he did a lot of the writing himself. And I really think that's the only way you can be successful, because if you're I could be a really good mimic, but I can't get all the way there because I'm not you. And I haven't had your experiences, right? And each one, this back to your point, like each one of us, what makes us potentially powerful writers is that we have had a unique set of experiences and relationships that no one else in the world has had.
Yeah, and you know that just hearing you talk about that too, I think it's salient for the conversation about like, where does the high school essay go from here? Because listen, I don't know if I don't know what could have convinced me to really get into it, you know, at that age. But what definitely didn't get me into it was the very sort of dry 5-paragraph argumentative essay that we're all familiar with from school, which is say what you're going to say, prove it in 3 different ways, and then say what you just said. You know, like, and actually that's the kind of essay that ChatGPT is really good at reproducing. But you're talking about like, if I was the 15-year-old me and I was listening to what you just said, and you're saying only you've lived these experiences, and then, you know, if we lean towards the personal and essentially, you know, tell these students that what you can write is, you know, unique to you, maybe we will be able to, you know, create a love of writing at a younger age, which is really the point of all of this. Is try, you know, it didn't succeed with me really, but what I say in the video is that it didn't succeed, but the heroic work of teachers, you know, on an insipid teenager like me was just giving me the basic competence of structure and grammar and syntax. And when I was moved to write, you know, when it finally hit me, when my life felt very shallow and confused, I had those fundamentals to work with. And I don't know. I have no like answer for the educational system, but great teachers and inspiring, people who can inspire you, I think it's really the only way to get through.
Yeah, and I don't think that's why teachers, I don't think, could be replaced by artificial intelligence.
Definitely
either,
not.
or at least the kind of teaching we're talking about. Offline is brought to you by onebladeshave.com. Do you hate shaving?
Yes.
Same. We all used to hate shaving too. You get your razor burn, you get your cuts. It's annoying.
You think you're safe because you're in your neighborhood barbershop. Turns out it's a hit.
Yeah, that's bad.
You know?
You don't want that to happen.
So all of this was a problem until we discovered One Blade razors. One Blade is the world's most intuitive single-edged razor, and it's guaranteed to eliminate your shaving-related skin issues.
And Wesley Snipes does it for you.
That's right. That's right. For any of you
Blade
who understand
Trinity
the
is a
movie
great
reference.
movie. Everyone's seen Blade.
All right. So what do you like most about using One Blade? What don't I like about it? Everything. The design. It's
no fuss.
easy to use. I don't get cuts. The shave is rather close.
I like the hybrid razor and the Genesis razor.
Well, it's funny.
Those
I
are my
like the
go-tos.
core. I like
You're
the core
guy?
yeah.
All right, fine.
You can turn shaving into a ritual that you actually enjoy. One blade's all you need. Big razor companies have been lying to us for decades, saying that more blades equals better shaves. It's just not true.
You think about it, it doesn't make any sense.
It's not true. All those blades are tearing up your skin. One Blade's state-of-the-art, award-winning razor design makes single-edge shaving completely natural and effortless. One Blade razors have a patented pivoting head that hugs the skin, ensuring the blade is always at the right angle all by itself. Also, your disposable plastic cartridge razor is not recyclable. Every year, literally billions of them end up in landfills and waterways, but One Blade refill blades are 100% recyclable. So upgrade your shave, save your skin, and save the planet one blade at a time. Head over to onebladeshave.com/offline today and use code offline to get 10% off your first order. All One Blade razors are guaranteed for life, whether it's the intro-level core razor or the premium Genesis. To upgrade your shave and to start shaving responsibly, get 10% off your One Blade order today at onebladeshave.com/offline. That's one spelled out, O-N-E, bladeshave.com/offline to get 10% off your first order with code offline. Offline is brought to you by Cariuma, the sustainable sneakers worn by skaters and surfers. They're reimagining classic sneakers with you and the planet in mind. It's the middle of winter, and time to get real about layers, lining, everything that's going to keep you warm and comfortable when you head out the door.
Time to face the truth. You've been lying to yourself.
When you can leave the parka at home, what's a parka? I haven't heard that word in a long time. The bestseller Aka is just right. 20,000 5-star reviews and over 70,000 waitlisters. Even your favorite celebrities love this versatile, crazy comfortable shoe. This is Cariuma's new school take on a classic sneaker. Take your pick of durable organic cotton canvas or ultra soft, responsibly sourced suede. Cariuma says cozy shouldn't come at a cost to the planet. That's why they created Katuri and Akatherma winter boots disguised high tops made with 100% vegan and recycled materials and produced in a way that's ethical and transparent. One thing you should know about Cariuma is that they're obsessed with comfort. Even their insoles are lined with vegan shearling. Cariuma ships all their sneakers free and fast in the USA and offers worldwide shipping and 60-day free returns. They deliver right to your front door using single box recycled packaging. And for a limited time, offline listeners can get an exclusive 15% off your pair of Cariuma sneakers. Go to cariuma.com/offline to get 15% off. That's cariuma.com/offline for 15% off only for a limited time. A big obstacle in the way here, and this gets to a couple of the essays in your book, is I think the internet. To the obstacle in the way of creative writing, right?
It's an obstacle in the way of a lot of things.
Yeah, well, of course. One thing I struggled with since I left the White House, especially over the last 5 years, is that I'm finding it much more difficult to write, which used to be my entire job. And as I've been doing on this show, I've wondered how much the internet has to do with it. In your book of fantastic essays, in one of them about the internet, you write, "When I'm consuming the internet, it feels like the agency dial has been turned to zero. Culture isn't just in my mind, it's steering my thinking. And as I spend more time online, I'm getting better at ascertaining the internet's opinions instead of developing my own." I read that and I was like, man, that is me. Do you think that's why it might be harder to write?
Like right before that in the essay, I go through this. I try to recreate this hour-long period after I saw the Cats trailer a couple years ago, and
Which
how
is so funny.
I was just like this weird, like detective trying to figure out what I should be thinking about this Cats trailer. And people who are online people, will I think relate to that experience of, of trying to figure out what the internet's thoughts for us are. And it goes to, I think, the same thing we've been talking about, which is that language is at the core of the human mind and culture. And the internet is just an expression of culture. And so I had this professor at Boston University who essentially taught that to us. And one interesting corollary of that is that because the mind is really just language, it means that there is no spatial quality to the mind. The mind is temporal. It's a function of time, and it happens in sequence. And if you think about thinking, we sometimes talk about having two thoughts at the same time, but that's not really how it works. They all come in sequence. And so what that essentially means is that you just have a calendar of time every day and a number of appointments that can be filled on that calendar. If you're online all the time, what essentially is happening is the internet is filling up all those appointments on your mind's timeline. And because the internet, especially like Twitter and a lot of social media, is language itself, what's essentially happening is that your mind is being swapped out for internet mind. It's not like you can just, if you give away time, you are giving away your mind. I mean, there's nothing else to the mind, and so you have to be sort of careful. And so,
and let me tell you, internet mind, easy to spot.
yeah. The internet mind is the mind that is trying to figure out what the Cats trailer is all about. That is internet mind, or in any number of realms. And so it makes it harder to write purely because you are not spending any generative time with language. You're just, for a lot of it, receiving the worst kind of language, horrible, not good for you. You could be spending some time reading good articles and things like that, which, will have a good effect for you. But what we all need to do, the only thing we can do is to step away from it and allow some language composition of our own, some time for that.
And just like forming our own opinions, I think is huge too. Because the way that echo chambers are talked about now, it's from like a sort of partisan political perspective, right? But I think there's something else going on there, which is sort of having in your mind your opinions being shaped by sort of the general cultural opinion. So like I've had these experiences where I finish a TV show or I finish a movie and I almost want to tweet about how great it is. But before I do that, I will check Twitter to be like, well, I don't want to step into something horrible and say that something I loved and everyone's going to be like, what the fuck? That's horrible. You're canceled.
You're speaking to me so much right now. I can't even tell you.
But then I've also done, like, I've watched speeches, like political speeches, and I did this. I tried to do, Twitter wasn't as crazy during the Obama years as it is now, but I've done this a few times where I'm like, okay, President Biden's giving a speech, or back when President Trump was giving a speech, or anyone's giving a speech, and I'm like, you know what? Instead of watching the speech while I am scrolling through Twitter, I want to just, because I'm going to talk about this on the pod, I want to just watch it and react to it, what I think of the speech.
What is that? What do you think?
Right, but that's the problem. And then I'm like, at least I can compare it to what's happening online, but I want to have my own opinion first. And I think that the reason I've had so much trouble writing is because every time I'm trying to like figure out a take on something, it is just a composite of the various takes that I have seen on the internet. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, I don't want to write it unless it's something new or something that I have to say that no one else has said yet. Otherwise, what's my point?
Yeah, I mean, you're just really speaking to my heart right now. I mean, I don't envy you because you have needs for takes on a much broader variety of things and a much bigger number of takes. You know, for me, like, I have come to terms with the fact that on a lot of things, I'd say probably the vast majority of things, I don't have an opinion. And that's okay. You know, because the question is, what's the quality of the opinion? I have these 10 essays that I wrote in the book. I release a nerdwriter video once a month or something. You know, that is essentially that comprises all
that's a
my
prolific
opinions.
number of takes. Yeah, I was gonna.
But well, I mean, like the 10 essays in the book, per se, the 11 essays in the book, like those are original ideas and opinions that I on each of them spent at least a month trying to think through what I actually think about this, because they meant a lot to me. And because like you're saying, like you want to say something that people haven't said before, that you feel has value, that's unique to you. Those are the things that I feel have value for me. And one of the reasons I really don't post like on Twitter or other social media is because I just don't really feel comfortable
Opining on everything. You know, it's
essentially, or just that, like, I don't really know what my opinion is. And we do live in a culture in which you are asked to give opinions on everything.
Yeah.
On
Twitter, you can watch it in real time. You're like, all the COVID experts just became Ukraine experts. There we go. A lot of overlap in that.
But I totally struggle with you. One realm is music. You know, like I have an issue where, like, and I don't know what to do about it, but when I listen to an album, I go on Pitchfork to see what they said about it. And like, I really wish that didn't affect me. But if the rating is below a 7, that is going to be a real difficult, you know, it's like, I try to divorce myself from those things. Yeah. But, you know, and I think it partly comes from the fact that, like, we are bombarded now with so much more information on such a wider variety of things than we ever have before, that as a shorthand, we have to rely on the opinions of others for a lot of things. You know, we have to not only, you know, trust in experts who are smarter than us or have spent time with, because we can't possibly do that kind of work ourselves. But, you know, when you're at a dinner party and someone's asking about, you know, the House of Representatives, this latest bill or that, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world if you parrot a talking point that you heard, if it actually has some resonance with you. You're not going to be able to get away with a like unique, incisive, like totally unique opinion on everything you come across. And so we're in this weird position, and the internet is certainly making it more difficult, if not just worse.
I interviewed Johan Hari last week, who wrote the book Stolen Focus, which is a book about paying attention to things. He writes at length about sort of letting your mind wander, the benefits of letting your mind wander. You write about this too. You call it free time for ideation. How did you come around to realizing that you weren't doing enough of that? And what's your process now?
Wow. Definitely don't have a process. It is a mess over here. No, because that essay, the internet essay too, like, it ends on a very pessimistic note with like this backsliding that happens, which I think we're all familiar with, of like setting up these boundaries for yourself where you're being really good about, and then slowly those things coming back into your life until it's worse than it was at the start. I think the way I sort of came to that was like, I am a constant input for things, whether it's the internet or other forms of media. And it was really just one day in the shower, realizing like, this is the only time of the day. Like, my mind is wandering. I'm in the shower. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
I'm not an input for anything. And you come up with some good ideas. You like go places you didn't think you would go. And so I tried to build that time into my life, you know, tried to build some time just to sit down and do nothing. But what I say in the book is that like, it's not easy. Primarily because the distractions of the internet, the time that you're being an input is like the perfect kind of thing to distract from the self-criticisms of your own mind, Yes. And so the very first things that are going to come to you when you build some free time are those things.
Yeah.
And then you remember, oh yeah, that's the reason why I was on TikTok for 30 hours because
yes, I am trying to distract myself from existential angst. There was a purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Let's reopen. But if you can get through that, and it's sort of like quitting sugar or quitting something, the first week is just going to be hell, but eventually you will be able to get to a place where you are more comfortable with that feeling and letting your mind sort of do its thing with language, like we've been talking about, will yield, I think, interesting, creative, therapeutic results. But again, I have. It's a roller coaster. A couple days ago I put the stupid freaking time, the things on the apps, the time limits, and I've overrode them every single day.
I know. I do the same thing. I do this. It's like sometimes it pauses me when your Twitter time is up and it's like 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I've been up since 5, and that's a problem. But it's really hard, and I think the reason it's hard is because it's not. I mean, the reason we don't call these devices addictive lightly here. Like, it's not always up to us. I mean, like, when we are exposed to them, when they're around, and when it is sort of permeating the entire society that we're in, it's hard. It's hard to put them down.
One thing that helps is reading books. I mean, that to me is like, and my wife actually turned me on to reading and listening at the same time. So book at the same time. And that puts me into like a kind of hyper focus. It just keeps me on like the train tracks,
That's interesting.
And it, again, goes right back to language. Like being exposed to long form text from a good writer is a really therapeutic, creative thing to experience. I talk about it like it's something from the distant past or something,
It kind of is. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
No, like I finished a novel in July on vacation, and I was like, this vacation was so restful and restorative, and I feel great. And I read this novel. Everyone's like, who the fuck do you think you? Yeah, I read 10 novels, I'm like, but I read this and it made me feel so good. It's like, that's what a lot of us are missing.
Try the headphones in the book.
I'm going to try this. I like this. Evan Puschak, thank you so much for joining. Go to Evan's YouTube channel, which has millions of subscribers. It's called Nerdwriter, and your book is Escape into Meaning. It is a fantastic series of essays, so go check it out. Thanks for joining Offline.
Thank you. This was so much fun.